Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 3836 AM. Today's date is February 9th, 2026, and the title of the episode is The Piece of Paper Was Never Supposed to Be Money. What was backing it had the value. Now, the rules of money are being rewritten right in front of our eyes. The institutions that control the financial system aren't waiting, warning, or wishing. They are acting, buying gold and silver at an unprecedented pace. They're preparing for something. The question is, are you? For nearly a decade, Noble Gold Investments has helped thousands of people protect their wealth with physical gold and silver. As the world shifts to hard assets, the window to act is closing. Let Noble Gold show you how simple it is to protect yourself and your family. While everyone else is reacting to the news, Noble Gold clients are positioning. The understanding that when the rules change, you need assets that don't depend on the system. Visit X22Gold.com and download your free wealth protection kit. That is X22Gold.com. The rules are changing. Make sure you are ready. Or just click the link in the description. And remember, past performance may not be indicative of future results. Investing in precious metals involves risk. Consult your financial advisor before making investment decisions. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, the private West Central Bank, the World Economic Forum, you can see their agenda is completely and utterly different than Trump's agenda and the people's agenda. Their agenda is to bring us into their new system. Trump's agenda is to actually bring us into a people's system. Two different systems completely. And you could see that at this point in time, the deep state players, the central bankers, they're going to fight to the very end to try to stop what Trump is about to do. And what I mean by about to do is that he's preparing the entire country to make this major transition into a new system that does not include the central bank system, which is going to be a very big problem for the deep state players because they depend on the central bank system. And no longer will any system be taking our hard-earned currency. And we have to remember, going all the way back to our founding fathers, the piece of papers that you hold, those were never supposed to be the actual money. Those were the claim check on the actual item that had value. And that was the gold and silver in the vaults. So basically they said, okay, instead of carrying around the gold and the silver, we will give you a claim check. And you use this claim check to transact business. But you could always go back and exchange it for the gold and silver. The central bankers hijacked all of this, and they made you believe that the piece of paper was actually the real money, when in fact, it never was. And we could see the central bankers, the deep state players, they are trying to down the system around Trump. This is what they've been trying to do for a very long time. The problem with all of this is that Trump has a new system to rely on if they down the old system. They never wanted this to happen. They wanted him to be trapped in their system, and they wanted to control what was going on with their system. They wanted to down their system to bring us into their new system. But if you have a system that is not part of the central bank system, how do you do this? It becomes a lot more difficult. And you can see that the deep state players, the central bankers, they're trying as best they can to transition into their new system, but they're going to have major problems. And every step of the way, they're going to keep pushing this. And what's very interesting is that the fake news has been coming out, and Bloomberg is reporting this, saying that Chinese regulators had advised financial institutions to rein in their holdings of US Treasuries, citing concerns over concentration risks and market volatility. Of course, they're citing anonymous people familiar with the matter, which means they have no information on this whatsoever, and they're putting this out there. Why? Because they want something to happen in the economic system. And basically what they really want is they want the system to implode on itself on Trump's watch. Really, that's what they're trying to do. And basically, they're trying to convince the big banks, China and the rest, to drop treasuries. And you have to remember, Scott Bessent said last week that despite the popular narrative, the treasuries market last year delivered its best performance since 2020 and saw a record foreign demand at auctions. And in reality right now, foreign holdings of U.S. Treasuries rose to a record $9.4 trillion in November, more than $500 billion higher than a year earlier. But you could see what they're trying to do. They're trying to push the dominoes down and they're trying to start something. But again, it's not going to work the way they thought it was going to work because once again, Trump has a system that rivals the central bank system. So the country, in reality, could operate without the central bank. Now, think about this. If Trump didn't start the tariff system and did what he did, where he made all the trade deals, actually allowed the oil companies to drill like crazy and actually produce oil, sell the oil across the world, implement the gold card, implement the AI technology revolution, and we are only depending on the central bank system. Would the central bank system have the leverage to down the system, and would Trump find it very, very difficult to actually control what was going on? Yes. See, if the central bank right now decides we're going to down the system, could Trump shift everything quickly to the new system and actually scale down the government right now, but keep everything operational? I do believe it's absolutely possible. And this is something the central banks never actually counted on. And this is going to be their major, major hurdle when they try to bring us into their new system, because they're not going to be able to get there. They're going to try, but they're not going to be able to get there because every day that passes, what happens? Trump's system becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. And what else happens? Well, more jobs are coming in. Fuel is actually decreasing in price. Inflation is leveled off right now. And Trump is preparing the country to move away from the central bank system. So everything that he's doing is the opposite of what the central bank actually really wanted. And you have to remember, the statistical numbers that they've been using, they're one gigantic illusion to keep you trapped in their economic system. And Trump now is bringing in the people to basically take those numbers and actually report on what's really going on. Because when I say they're an illusion, go back to the time Biden/Obama was in office from 2020 to 2024. Those job numbers were fake. The inflation numbers were fake. What do I mean by that? Well, they told us inflation's under control. They told us inflation is perfect. They told us the economy was doing really well. But what they didn't tell you is that every single year that inflation was at 3, 5, 8, 9, whatever it was, and it was even coming down to 8 to 7 to 3. They didn't tell you that it was all cumulative. So it wasn't like, oh, he had 1 year that it was 3, 1 year that it was 8, 1 year that was 5. Now it's back to 3, so it's okay. No, it's cumulative, and that inflation just doesn't go away. It stays where it is. And what's very interesting, and Peter Sayong put this out, is that job openings collapsed by 400,000 last month, falling below the number of unemployed for the first time in 5 years. Meanwhile, new data says mass layoffs could be next. What's causing it? Well, take a listen to what he says here.
Job openings collapsed by 500,000 last month. Meanwhile, new data says mass layoffs could be next. Are we in the dreaded no hire, no fire economy? The numbers come from the notorious Bureau of Labor Statistics, who says job openings are down 500,000 in the last month and 1 million in the past year, falling to just 6.5 million. That matches other data showing slowing job creation and rising jobless claims, especially in the Washington, D.C. swamp. So why are the jobs evaporating? Now, part of it is normalization after the COVID labor shortages, when paying tens of millions of people to sit on the couch created the worst labor shortage in our lifetimes. At one point in 2022, there were 12.5 million unfilled jobs, almost twice as many who were unemployed. That led to labor hoarding, where companies hold on to workers they do not need, which has been slowly unwinding for 4 years now. In fact, today's 6.5 million is smack in the middle of the pre-COVID average. It's way above job openings during Obama, which were 4.5 million on average. Still, dropping 500,000 in a month is a big deal, and it pulls openings below the number of unemployed Americans. Now, about a third of the drop was government jobs and government-funded education and health, since federal spending is growing much slower than under Biden. Most of the rest was professional and business services, so cubicle jobs, along with finance, insurance, and IT. Now, those are interesting because those jobs are ground zero for AI replacement, particularly entry-level paper jobs. To give a sense, last year, Goldman's CEO said AI can now draft 95% of an IPO filing in minutes that used to take a 6-person team 2 weeks. Take that 20-fold improvement across millions of low-end bank jobs, IT jobs, and cubicle jobs, and it adds up. In contrast, manufacturing construction job openings actually rose on the year. So the cubicle jobs are melting, the physical jobs are rising. And that brings us to layoffs. I've mentioned in recent videos how companies aren't getting rid of workers yet, instead they're cutting hires. But Challenger Gray just released new data that layoffs jumped 118% on last year among the companies it samples. Now that hasn't hit the wider layoff rates yet, but it is ominous. One of the gold standards for jobs is so-called quit rates. What percent of people quit their jobs voluntarily? That matters because people quit when they think there's plenty of other jobs. So quit rates are holding up for now. They're about the average since 2000. But with job openings evaporating, there goes the buffer. So what's next? Brought to you by iTrust Capital. Historically, companies reduce openings first, then they reduce hires, then they start with the layoffs. We're moving down that road despite historic rates of GDP growth. Now, part of this is benign. It's federal layoffs, deportations, slower growth in federal spending are all reducing parasite jobs. But a big chunk is bad policy. While Trump is doing what he can with new factories, drill, baby, drill, and cutting red tape that he can cut, Congress has done close to nothing. No new tax breaks for small business, no relief on business costs, no big cuts to environmental and labor mandates.
So as we go through this whole transition period, we know that coming out of Biden/Obama, a lot of the numbers were manipulated. We had COVID. And now as Trump is building up the economy, yes, we're going to see a lot of this. So let's see how this all plays out. But what I do believe is going to happen is once the factories start to be built, once those jobs, those cubicle jobs, all of a sudden reappear within the corporations and the physical labor jobs within the manufacturing plants, once those start to happen, you're going to see a lot of jobs being produced. And you have to remember, as Trump takes the government jobs and reduces them, and of course, he can't do it all at once because, again, it would show that, hey, look, we lost all our jobs. Now, the rules of money are being rewritten right in front of our eyes. The institutions that control the financial system aren't waiting, warning, or wishing. They are acting, buying gold and silver at an unprecedented pace. They're preparing for something. The question is, are you? For nearly a decade, Noble Gold Investments has helped thousands of people protect their wealth with physical gold and silver. As the world shifts to hard assets, the window to act is closing. Let Noble Gold show you how simple it is to protect yourself and your family. While everyone else is reacting to the news, Noble Gold clients are positioning. The understanding that when the rules change, you need assets that don't depend on the system. Visit X22Gold.com and download your free wealth protection kit. That is X22Gold.com. The rules are changing. Make sure you are ready. Or just click the link in the description. And remember, past performance may not be indicative of future results. Investing in precious metals involves risk. Consult your financial advisor before making investment decisions. As he does it slowly but surely, and transitions all of this into the private sector, because that's what he's doing. He's taking the illusionary government jobs, because remember, they don't produce anything. Actually, the people pay for those jobs. People have to work harder and harder to pay for more and more of the borrowing to pay these people. As these jobs are reduced slowly but surely, they're being transitioned into the private sector. And to transition them into the private sector, you need private sector jobs. How are we going to do that if the entire central bank system was removing the private sector jobs and shoving them into the government jobs? So basically, we're going through a transitional period right now. And yes, some of these numbers are going to look kind of odd. A lot of them are going to say, oh, look, the economy's falling apart. But what Trump is actually doing is he's moving the government jobs to the private sector jobs. And we're going to see the private sector start to really build up right now. And in the end, you're going to see that all these government jobs, they were worthless. They didn't really do anything. And since we don't have those jobs, the people don't have to pay for that anymore. So you're going to see a very big change as we move forward. Plus, I do believe Trump, he's trying to do this in a way where it doesn't affect people's homes. It doesn't affect people's jobs. It doesn't affect people's wealth. Because you have to remember, if you go back to 1971, when we came off the gold standard, we went to the petrodollar system, we went into a very deep recession. Because again, the central bankers, they don't care what happens when they transition you into a new system, just like if they're trying to transition us into the central bank digital currency. Yes, it's not going to happen here in this country, but that's their main goal. Do they care if the economy implodes on itself? Do they care if you lose your wealth? Do they care if the whole system goes into a deep depression? No, they don't. And Trump, he's trying to make sure that this doesn't happen as he shifts us into the new system here. Unusual Whales put this out and said, Trump says, people that own their homes, we're going to keep them wealthy. We're going to keep those prices up. We're not going to destroy the value of their home so that somebody who didn't work very hard can buy a home. So he's letting you know that what's happening right now, we're going to keep everything steady. So this way, no matter what we do, we're not going to allow your wealth to be removed, even when you're trying to give homes to other people. So no matter what happens, I do believe what he's saying right now is that he wants the people to keep their wealth. And every step of the way, you could see that Trump, he wants the interest rates down. Remember, he wants 50-year mortgages. He wants lower interest rates because in the end, he's trying to build wealth in this country, not debt. It's the opposite. He wants the younger generation to invest. He doesn't want the younger generation to be saddled with debt. That is the difference here. Trump, he put this out on Truth. He said the following: Trump moves can cut loan rates 50 basis points, Barclays says. So changes at Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, along with President Trump's MBS purchase directive, could together lower mortgage rates by half a percentage point, according to Barclays. Between buying 200 billion MBS, 10 to 15 basis points, cutting guarantee fees by roughly half, 25 to 35 basis points, and streamlining some aspects of the lending process, 5 to 10 basis points, the administration can hope to achieve total mortgage rate declines on the order of 50 basis points this year, which is going to help those people that really want to get into a home. And I do believe once we have that and actually bring the rates even lower and actually introduce 50-year mortgages, this is going to assist the people. Because remember, I do believe what he's doing right now, he's prepping the entire country, not just to keep everything status quo, but to bring us back to sound money, to give us back the buying power. And if you have a 50-year mortgage, if you were able to purchase with very, very low rate, your actual mortgage payment is very, very low. So if you have a very, very low mortgage payment and we're going back to sound money and your buying power is coming back, does that build wealth? Yes, it does. Because you have to remember, when the central bankers came into existence, they did it slowly but surely. They had to put all the pieces together to make sure their system was operational. That's why in 1913, they started out very slowly. They introduced the central bank. Yes, we were still on the gold standard. They started to introduce tariffs. They started taxes. They started to reduce the tariffs that we were on. Because again, if you have a central bank, you really don't have tariffs. If you don't have a central bank, you have tariffs. So they slowly shifted the money coming in externally to fund everything to actually having the people work very hard to support the country. And the pieces of paper that people held, they were supposed to be a claim check. See, the real value, the real money was in the vaults. And instead of carrying around, all the silver coins and all the gold coins, because they're very, very heavy, it was a lot easier to have a piece of paper. It was very light. And you were able to go back to the bank and actually trade that in for silver or gold. And what the central bankers did is they tricked the people and they shifted everything from real money into the worthless pieces of paper. And they made you think that that was worth something. And then what did they do? They devalued that piece of paper over time by creating a lot more of the pieces of paper. And they made you believe that it wasn't their pieces of paper that was losing value. It was actually all the products that you see that was losing value. It's a gigantic Madoff scheme if you really think about it. Sam explains, paper money was never supposed to be the money. It was a receipt. You deposited gold at a bank. The bank gave you a note that said the bearer of this note may redeem it for X amount of gold. That's all a dollar was, a claim ticket. The paper had no value. The gold in the vault did. The paper just made it easier to carry. The system worked for centuries. Every major currency was backed this way: the British pound, the French franc, the US dollar. Then slowly governments realized something. If people trust the paper, they never come for the gold. So they printed more notes than the they had gold. Then more, then more. When too many people asked questions, they closed the gold window. That was supposed to be temporary. 55 years later, the dollar is still backed by nothing but trust. And that trust has cost you about 97 to 98% of your purchasing power. The receipt became the money. Global money became trusted based. And money became nothing but a promise that nobody has to keep. And that's absolutely true. And by doing this, you destroy the entire system. And who makes out? The central bankers do. And they know that system only can go so far until they have to reset the entire system. And that is what they're trying to do right now. But if you look at it, every step of the way, what is Trump doing? He is now setting everything up, preparing the country to shift away what the central bank actually wants. You see, back during Nixon, he had to go along with it. He removed the US dollar from gold, and we went full fiat. Trump now is going to take that Federal Reserve note, once he pays it all back, and then it's called the US dollar, and he's going to reattach it to gold. And everything that he does right now is in preparation for that. So he wants to make sure that people have actual assets. People have the ability to survive all of this, even if they don't have assets. And that's why he's prepping the entire country for this, removing those people in government, setting up the tariff, energy, technology, gold card system, making sure that he has the Federal Reserve controlled in what he wants to do. Because again, you can't have the Federal Reserve System fighting against you every step of the way. It just won't work. And this is why I do believe he nominated Kevin Warsh. Now, this doesn't mean Kevin Warsh is going to be confirmed in May. We've seen this once before, or multiple times before, where he actually sends someone up and those individuals do not like him. And then he actually brings in the real candidate. This might be the real candidate. But once again, you could see that he is in line with the people that he brings in. And what's very interesting is a reporter asked Trump if he asked Kevin Warsh to commit to you that he will push to cut interest rates if he is confirmed. Trump said no, but we talk about it. I've been following him. So Trump is not going to come out and say, yeah, listen, I told him exactly what to do, because he has to keep the optics looking good. He has to show the entire world that, no, the Fed is independent. Don't worry. I'm making suggestions to the Fed. And actually, you have to remember, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has already set that narrative up where the president has the right to suggest what should be done. He's not dictating to the Federal Reserve of what should be done. He's suggesting. Now, the Federal Reserve will make their own decision, but you can see how this is all playing out right now. And he needs to keep the optics good to make everyone believe that he is not getting involved in the Federal Reserve business on what to do with the economy, with the interest rates and everything else. So I do believe he's playing the game just like the deep state players, the fake news has always played the game. And he's playing the game, but basically he's going to be winning the game in the end, because once again, we could see where all this is headed. And I do believe the Federal Reserve, with the suggestions that Trump is making, will follow along. Actually, if you go back to 2018, 2019, Trump made suggestions to the Fed. Stop raising rates. What did they do? They stopped raising rates. Same thing's going to happen now. I believe the rate should be a little bit lower right now. So to make this transition into a people's system and to go back to sound money, you need coordination. And I do believe that's what Trump is doing right now. He's getting the coordination that he needs, because once again, we've been on a system that should have never been allowed. And we're using currency, money, that is not real money. They're just claim checks without the part where you can claim it. And Trump is going to bring that back, which means everyone's wealth in this country is going to increase rapidly. When we went to the central bank system, we came off the gold standard, what happened? Everyone's wealth declined. Now everyone's wealth is going to be given back. And this is going to be an absolutely incredible time. And I do believe this is why Trump calls it the golden age. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.